What's going on everyone, it's Justin here, and today I've got my review of the OnePlus 6T after having it for about a month. So the OnePlus 6 and the OnePlus 5s were my favorite Android phones for the past year or so. I just find the Android experience very nice, the Oxygen OS. The hardware's always been well designed, the devices feel solid, and for the most part I think just the user experience as a whole was what I enjoyed the most. As someone who reviews pretty much every phone that comes out during the year when it comes to iOS and Android, many of which cost a lot of money. Androids nowadays are near the $1,000 point on the high end, whereas iPhones in Canada can go up to $2,000, and at the price point that the OnePlus line has always been offered in, despite it not being budget anymore, I think it's still an incredible value and is the easiest Android phone for me to recommend to most people. By no means is the phone perfect, but I think OnePlus's changes in their second launch of the year, the OnePlus 6T, are ones that make it very worthwhile even for those who have the OnePlus 6. Whether it's the design refinements, the new fingerprint sensor, the larger battery. Looking at the back of the device, it still has a glass finish that comes in two different colors, whether it's the frosted or the gloss. And on the side it is metal and feels very nice in the hand, as well as the volume rockers you're going to find on the left side, and on the right side you have your power, sleep, wake, and also one of my favorite touches, which is the alert switch. This is also the first time that OnePlus has removed the headphone jack on their phone, and I actually think it comes with good reason. The battery is larger, you also have the in-display fingerprint sensor, which is one of the biggest things when it comes to the 6T. The way it works is it actually uses light to scan your fingerprint, and it is built in screen here. But when it comes to speed, I will say I was pretty impressed with it. It does work well, but definitely not as fast as a fingerprint sensor, and you're gonna notice that. And even though this is kind of a crazy proposition, I actually think it would have been nice to have two different options, whether it's a fingerprint sensor on the back as well as a new in-screen one. I do feel like the in-display fingerprint sensors is something that we're definitely going to see more in the future. When it comes to feel, the OnePlus 6T is probably my favorite device right now. It just has a nice screen size, it feels solid in the hand, it looks great, but you do have to remember that the glass back can crack. If you want to prevent that as well as scratches, you can go ahead and check out Dbrand, as they have many different colors and textures, and I'm going to leave a link to that down below. The device still doesn't have an official IP rating, but from some of the tests that you might see on the internet, it is water resistant to some degree. But of course, IP certifications cost a lot of money, and that's another way that OnePlus has kind of reduced the cost of this device. One of the biggest hardware changes though is the display. It's a beautiful 6.4 inch 2340 by 1080 optic AMOLED display, and I think OnePlus in the past few years has done a very good job with their displays despite it not being a crazy high resolution. They're very sharp, bright, vibrant, but still rather accurate, and you do have the option to change between different modes when it comes to color space. Even though I've used a ton of devices with even OLED displays and higher resolutions, the OnePlus display is still one of my favorites. With many phones this year having notches, some of which larger than others, OnePlus has gone with one of the smallest ones that you're going to see. You also do have the option to hide it if you would like, and on the top above the notch is a small speaker port, and on the bottom you have a bit of a chin. But the 86% screen to body ratio of this display is something that hopefully more companies will follow. As for the specs, this device is literally top notch. You have the latest Snapdragon 845 processor, paired with 128 gigs of storage with a starting price point of $549, so that's a bump from $64. And the base model comes with 6 gigs of RAM, and the highest storage option comes with 8. I was in New York for the launch, and I will tell you that the line was really big on the first day, and they had just announced the pop-up earlier that day. The Times Square launch was awesome, and it was literally the largest line I've ever seen for an Android device. I think now that we've talked about how good of a job OnePlus has done with their hardware though, software is a make or break experience, and I've had a lot of phones this year where I really enjoyed the hardware but just really didn't feel comfortable with the software. The OnePlus 6T has Oxygen OS, and it ships with the latest Android Pie, and is just so smooth and a pleasure to use. The wallpaper's great, the animations are overall very nice, the icons look great, and I think the home screen menu is very intelligent and useful, and I just felt like the Android experience was the closest that I would want to be able to switch over to Android. This is definitely a near stock Android experience that has a few features that are actually useful. Even though the device has great specs, I feel like the software is very efficient, as well as the display resolution that's considered conservative nowadays. I can tell you the battery life was really good, and the battery size is 3700 mAh, which is a jump from 3300, and in the same year that is nice to see. I think at that point, with the boost in size of over 10%, the headphone jack is something that you're probably not going to miss for the most part. The screen on time was easily 5 to 5.5 hours. It also has dash charge, which is pretty fast, but one thing that this phone is missing is wireless charging, even though you do have a glass back, and hopefully we will see that next year, but at this price point, you just really can't have everything, and this is one of the first compromises. As for the camera, this is one of the hardware things that has remained unchanged from the previous generation OnePlus 6 at 16 and 20 megapixels. When it comes to the camera, the OnePlus has definitely always fit in well within its price point when it comes to quality, but if you were to compare it with a device that was hundreds of dollars more, you could probably spot the difference, and that totally makes sense. Some of the software changes that was introduced to the OnePlus 6T that will also go to the previous generation though is night mode as well as portrait lighting. The night mode takes a couple seconds to take multiple exposures of the same image and put together into one, and I do think the results are pretty good with quite a bit of sharpening. Studio lighting looked pretty decent as well, but it's just not something that I find myself using that much on any device. So at the end of the day, what do I think of the OnePlus 6T, and should you buy it if you have the previous generation? And this is literally my favorite Android phone at the moment, and I've had a lot of troubles trying to find a major flaw with the price point in mind. If this phone was to rank up against the prices of Samsung and Google, then some of the things I would complain about is the fact that the camera could definitely be better, wireless charging, and IP rating. But at its price point, I think it's a steal for what it is. You get 128 gigs of storage, the best specs, a beautiful display, an in-display fingerprint sensor, great design, and great build quality. I've literally recommended it to everyone out there except for dedicated smartphone photographers. If you have the OnePlus 6 though, some of the things you're gonna have to keep in mind is the new fingerprint sensor, whether or not that's something that you like. Otherwise, in this device, I think there are some characteristics of things that you will see in 2019, including smaller notches, more headphone jacks disappearing, and an in-display fingerprint sensor. If you guys have any questions, as always, make sure you drop a comment down below and subscribe to the channel, drop a like on this video, and I'll see you all in the next one.